So this is the Canon C70. It's a cinema camera with a Super 35 sensor, 16 stops of dynamic range, dual audio inputs, a built-in ND filter system, and can shoot RAW 4K up to 120 frames per second. I use this for all my professional shoots as it literally does it all. However, it isn't cheap. This here is the Canon PowerShot G7X. It's a 20 megapixel compact camera with a built-in lens, shoots 1080p up to 60 frames per second. This is more of a pocketable vlogging camera that's also pretty decent for photography, and it's much more affordable if you're just a hobbyist. I get a lot of comments asking how to shoot on a budget, so today I'm going to be using both cameras to shoot this R34 Skyline GTR, and we're going to compare the footage. Alright, just real quick, here are the settings I'm going to be using on the C70. We're recording in 10-bit 422. Make sure we're in 4K resolution. Frame rate, 60 frames per second. Now I'm going to drop the aperture to f1.2 because my lens goes all the way down to 1.2. Then I'll adjust my ISO accordingly. A really cool feature this cinema camera has is shutter angle. It's set at 180 degrees to automatically adjust shutter to whatever frame rate I'm in. Okay, now settings for the G7X. First thing you want to do is find the manual mode. Shooting completely manual is the way to go. This camera is capable of shooting 60 frames, so that's what we'll do. I was really surprised to see that this little guy has an ND filter. Not sure how many stops, but it definitely will help in broad daylight. ISO looks good so far. And then I'm going to manually set white balance. Let's change picture style to the flattest available profile. That would be neutral. Unlike the C70, this camera uses shutter speed instead of shutter angle. So when following the 180 degree rule, I will have to set my shutter speed accordingly to whatever frame rate I've chosen. In this case, 1/125th a second is good. Finally, the G7X's built-in lens can go as low as f1.8 when fully zoomed out. So we're going to use that for maximum depth of field. Alright, so if you couldn't tell already, the biggest telltale difference between the two cameras is the color. You can't really compete with the amount of color data the C70 is able to capture. Its high dynamic range really shines here as it retains the highlights, whereas on the G7X, it all gets blown out. You can especially tell with the GTR's color shifting paint. On the G7X, it's quite dull. With one being 4K and the other 1080, you can also see the difference in sharpness, but sometimes on YouTube, you can't really tell in my opinion. In terms of camera movement, obviously with the C70 being mounted on a gimbal, the shots will look smoother. Unfortunately, I was not able to balance the G7X onto a gimbal as it was way too light and it being very small would not allow proper balancing. So I just did everything handheld with the G7X, and honestly, with some steady hands and years of practice, the handheld footage was not bad at all. I also added some post-stabilization while editing, and I'd say it looks pretty good. If you guys want to play around with the GTR footage that I shot on the C70, just join my Patreon and you'll get access to raw clips every month. If you want to practice editing, I would highly suggest subbing to my Patreon. Thanks everyone, and I hope this video was helpful.